creates questions the human mind cannot answer. Out of reach, past all we can see, hear, and touch, beyond all we understand, lies the extraordinary. The Extraordinary is the story of a man who cheated death for a living. Until the day he came face to face with his maker, when an 8-centimeter nail was driven right through his heart.
I was terrified that he was not going to make it through this. I knew the size of the nail that was flush on his chest.
The tip of the nail was driving into his aorta like a woodpecker every time his heart beat.
The Extraordinary is the simple family tradition of remembrance that revealed pictures that cannot be explained. Images of the dead on their gravestones.
In the corner there, it's a distinct face. It's a full eye, it's a full nose, the mouth, the chin.
It is the guiding spirit of 90210 star Ian Ziering. Not a movie great or a Hollywood guru, but a long-dead grandfather.
He was just smiling at me as if to say, you know, I've got my eye on you, and everything's okay. And it's so bizarre.
The Extraordinary is George Anderson and his talks with the dead. Tonight, more secrets he could not have known from people he never met.
It's something that no one else could have ever possibly have known.
It is the day a horse called Shannon wrote his name into history. Not for winning, just for finishing.
Old-timers that were there that day will readily tell you to this day that it's the greatest run ever on a racetrack.
Just some of the stories that lie beyond our normal understanding. Tonight on The Extraordinary.
That's one horse race I would really have loved to have seen. Good evening. I'm Warwick Moss. We learn to be fatalistic about death. When it's time to go, it's time to go. God's will. And sometimes it seems that if it's not our time, then no force on earth can take us, even though we look death in the eye. This is the story of a young man who challenged fate head-on so many times, he seemed to be invincible. Then one day, fate turned to him. Deep in the Sierra Nevada mountain range of Northern California, there is a place where freight trains of the Southern Pacific Railroad come round a bend through a long tunnel and emerge between high snowbanks. Among young hotshot skiers of the region, there was a long-standing challenge. Come down the mountain to the right, lift off from the 30-foot snowdrift, pass over the front engine of the train as it sped through and land safely on the other side. The first man to meet the challenge was a teenager by the name of Mike Spaulding. Before he achieved the stunt, doing a mid-air backflip in the process, 3 other men had died trying.
One of them hit the far wall when he got over the train. He made it over the train, hit the far wall, slid underneath the wheels. Second guy hit the top of the train, tumbled in between the cars, and was eventually run over and killed. And the third man that did complete the jump caught a cameraman's jacket on his boot buckle, sucked him into the, he was jumping an electric train, sucked him into the wires.
On this day, years later, Mike Spaulding advised this European skier on the speed and angle needed to make the jump. Then, for old time's sake, with little practice and out of shape, Mike Spaulding couldn't resist one more shot himself. On the way down, he realized he didn't have enough speed. The sun had softened the snow. He probably wasn't going to make it. But if he was going out, there was only one way to go.
So I figured, well, if I go out, I'm going to go out in style. I'm going to throw a backflip. I dropped my head back. I was 3 feet off the top of the car, looking at the car, and my last thought was, I'm going to eat this one, and tried to suck my knees in, hoping that I could at least clear the skis, and no go. I clipped the end of the engine, or clipped the car, and that was all she wrote.
But Mike Spaulding lived. Once again, his comments after the collision were typical.
The paint on the front of this one's from the SP train.
Oh yeah, the SP will charge you for that.
Yeah, they'll probably be up here wanting me to repaint another one.
You did good.
Well, next time maybe, never again.
You'll do it again.
Oh, I don't think so.
Nobody present believed him. Since he was 15, Spaulding had been a professional freestyle skier, tempting fate, the odds, the weather, and any mountain they said couldn't be skied. But more years passed, and Mike Spaulding became a carpenter. 2 years ago, he turned 30. Ironically, it is in this more mellow period that Mike would make the most miraculous escape of his life. Not on a ski slope, but here, working a routine day on a house frame in the hills overlooking the nearby town of Truckee, California. On this day, December the 5th, 1991, Spaulding would shoot a 3 1/4 inch nail right through his heart and live to tell the story.
I had a 2x14 Raptor in one hand, holding it like this, and the gun in the other. And I usually walk around with my finger on the trigger all the time. When this is depressed, the gun will go off. And the wind came up, started blowing real hard. I was just about ready to pin it off. I was been holding it there, and wind blew it over. It hit the tip of the gun. The tip of the gun swung in like this and went off. And it was like, where'd the nail go?
His co-worker that morning was his best friend, Travis McMaster.
I was at least 12 feet above him. I saw something shiny in his chest. And he panicked. I saw the panic in his face, and he didn't know where the nail hit.
It was typical that Spaulding thought he could just pull the nail from his chest and keep working.
So I grabbed my cat's paw. This is what we use for pulling nails, and I was going to line up on it with my cat's paw to pull it out of my chest.
McMaster knew better.
I see him with his cat's paw on his chest. I come down and immediately tell him to drop his tool bags, to get into my truck.
By the time they reached the truck, Spaulding sensed he was in real trouble. His friend Travis tried to appear calm, but he could see the head of the nail and knew the internal damage it must have done.
But I was terrified that he was not going to make it through this. I knew the size of the nail that was flush on his chest.
With lights flashing and horn blowing, he drove 15 kilometres of winding road at speeds topping 100 kilometres an hour, all the while urging Spaulding to hang on.
I had a lot of problems breathing. And I was having a lot of problems keeping my eyes open. I felt like I wanted to go to sleep. I wanted to go to sleep real bad.
And I see him getting more and more pale, and his respiration is becoming more increased, and at one point on the road he fell asleep, and I thought he had died. I screamed at him, Mike, wake up! You're not gonna die on me. You're gonna be okay. This is not gonna happen. You're gonna live through this. But I actually thought he had died.
For the first time in his daredevil life, Mike Spaulding considered death during that ride. It was a realization that made him think of one person, his girlfriend Judy. Judy had so far rejected his proposal, distrusting marriage since her parents divorced. But before this day was through, both Mike and Judy would change their minds about a lot of things. In deep shock and fading fast, Spaulding gave McMaster one instruction as he was wheeled into the Tahoe Forest Hospital.
The only words out of Mike's mouth were, I want you to reach Judy and let her know what has happened. I do not want to die without her being aware of what's happened, and I want to talk to her one more time. If this is it, I want her to know.
He said, no, you got to go. Mike's in trouble. And that's all he said, and I just shut the register, and I ran out the door with him.
Back at the hospital, bearded 6'4" Dr. Howard Boone, dressed in his customary blue jeans and cowboy boots, had just come out of assisting in a hernia operation. He was summoned to emergency and took just one look at Spaulding. He'd met him a few times in town, but the sight now was devastating. Sweat poured from his face and body as he struggled to breathe. His lips had turned blue from lack of oxygen. This man was dying rapidly.
In essence, the nail of the tip of the nail was driving into his aorta like a woodpecker every time his heart beat.
Boone's colleague, Dr. Jacinta Orozco, agreed they had no time to fly Spaulding to the heart unit in Reno.
First of all, if we did nothing, there's a good chance he's going to die. And second of all, if we delayed his surgery, there's a good chance he's going to die. So he needed to have something done right away.
Emergency room nurse Judy Earhart.
I knew just by looking at him that he was dying. We started IVs on him, we did vital signs, we hooked him up to the monitor, we did some special heart studies.
It had been 16 years since Dr. Boone had performed an operation like this, and he had never seen a 3-inch nail through someone's heart before. To crack open Spaulding's chest cavity with the outdated Lepsky knife, the surgical team had to resort to a 3-pound hammer because the bone was so strong. Yet it was this same bodily strength that worked in his favor.
As we split his sternum vertically down the center and retracted the edges to the sides with a large device that looks like a European car jack designed to spread the halves of the sternum, we could see inside and see where the nail had penetrated.
Millimeter by millimeter, Boone edged the nail out of the heart. Finally, the most critical moment, the repair of the gaping hole in the aorta, the main artery right at the juncture with the heart. As Boone gently pulled off the blood clot covering the hole, blood spurted across the room. Orozco quickly sealed it with his finger.
After the suture was placed in the aorta, we held pressure on it for 5 or 6 minutes to give it plenty of time to seal in the hopes that one suture would suffice. It was a very long 6 minutes. As we realized that the aortic suture had held and would suffice, a communal sigh of relief went up from everybody in the operating room who had been holding his breath to see how this would turn out.
It wasn't his day to die. It just wasn't. Everything was just clockwork.
I'm convinced Mike had an angel on his shoulder that day.
And 5 hours after it began, a nurse walked into the waiting room and spoke to Judy.
The nurse says, do you want to see what he just went through? And I said, yes. The doctors gave him 24 hours. And I said, we're getting a priest in here tomorrow, and you're going to marry me. And he just said, I love you.
Mike Spaulding's recovery was so amazingly swift, and his demands to go home so intent, that Dr. Boone let him leave the hospital after just 3 days. Judy and Mike were married 6 days later.
Maybe it took this for her to really figure out how much I really did love her.
Though they no longer work together, Mike and Travis have become even closer as friends.
If it wasn't for Travis, I'd be dead. That's all there is to it. It's a favor I can never repay.
Mike Spaulding still skis and has been back on his construction job for 2 years. But somewhere back in the Sierra Nevada mountain range of Northern California, he sometimes hears the distant echo of a Southern Pacific freight train emerging from the tunnel.
There's still a part of me that wants to go out and do it one more time. And since I've spent 8 of my time, I want one more shot. And it's out there, and I'll get it.
Every year, on the second Sunday in May, families across Australia spend time remembering at the graves of lost loved ones. For more than 20 years, one Sydney family solemnly observed that tradition. Then, on Mother's Day last year, it happened. They placed their flowers, they paid their respects, and they took photographs. Photographs that could really make you think about the here and the hereafter.
The two sisters and myself continued up the tradition of going to the cemetery every Mother's Day. Maybe we didn't go any other time, but we never ever missed Mother's Day.
John Strange's mother and father now rest side by side in Leppington Cemetery, west of Sydney. Soon after Miriam passed away in 1970, the family began their annual Mother's Day pilgrimage. And they continued that tradition after their father Jack died in 1980. But last year, when the event was recorded on film, there were mysterious, maybe even ghostly results.
I just looked at him and just said to the wife, well, look at this one, how clear Dad's has come out and how blurry Mum's come out. And I said it's with the same camera. But I couldn't understand why one was so clear and the other one was so blurry.
As Keith Smith reveals in his soon-to-be-published book Supernatural 2, at first the blur confused John Strange. But then he came up with a possible explanation that's both haunting and startling. Not only about the photograph of his mother's grave, but the one of his father's as well. You see, it was only by chance that John took his camera along last year.
Fellas, here I is.
One of his sisters had moved to Adelaide, the other was living in Moree, and neither could be there that day. So John decided to take some photographs so that later they could be there in spirit at least.
I'll clean you up so you can smile real well with the photo.
John's camera was a new one. It was fully automatic and he'd never had any real problems with it before. So you can understand why he was a bit surprised when he saw the blurry print. But it was only when he showed the photo of Miriam's grave to a niece that he really began to wonder.
And she said, Uncle John, if you turn it upside down, like that, she said, there you can see the image of a face and it looks like Nana's hair line. And when you got the photo of my mother as well, and you put this to it, you can see that it is my mother's hairline, but the face, I don't know.
Let's just go over that again. First, the photo of the grave turned upside down. Then the old photograph of Miriam. There certainly seems to be an outline on the gravestone, and it's not all that dissimilar to Miriam's. But John's been looking even closer.
You can see an image. Well, I can see an image of a face. And you can see the two eyes, nose, and cheek, and a sort of a long chinny bone on it.
Then there's the other photograph John took that same Mother's Day. With this one of Jack's grave, there was no problem. Well, not with the focus. But when we zoom in, perhaps you'll see what John's about to describe.
In the corner there, it's a distinct face. It's a full eye, it's a full nose, the mouth, the chin.
And according to John, if you compare this with an actual snapshot of his father, you can see a resemblance. The shape of the face, the mouth, and even Jack's distinctive nose.
It makes you look and makes you wonder. I honestly can't say, no.
All right, come on now, smile.
John Strange believes that maybe, just maybe, last Mother's Day, Miriam and Jack were cooperating, smiling and sending their love to the family. Now, some grown-ups might tend to flick past Beverly Hills 90210 on the TV with an adult kind of impatience for the misadventures of those spoiled little rich kids. But then we run across one of those TV kids named Ian Ziering, off camera. And he tells us a story about looking to an unlikely elder for approval, his dead grandfather.
Steve, man! Steve, you kiss me? I'm gonna slap you. You didn't think she liked me, did you? She loves me. Love. She loves me, because I'm... For a year I wanted to do that to you.
On 90210, Ziering plays a young character named Steve Sanders, a decent sort of kid who gets into the usual problems with teachers, parents, and girls.
You got a nose job.
Yeah, I did.
It looks good.
The dialogue may not be Tolstoy, but the show is one of the most popular in the country right now among the younger set. And while some of the stars like Shannon Doherty seem to get into as much trouble in real life as they do in 90210, Mr. Ziering showed us a different side.
I don't think I believe in reincarnation. I think everybody gets one shot at it. For the most part, I believe that when you die, whatever it is that makes you you will become part of a greater thing. You may have your individuality amongst whatever it is that you're a part of, but then again, you become part of a whole. That's kind of hard to explain. I don't really understand it myself, but it's just a feeling I get inside. Whenever things are going well, you know, I consciously try not to alter my routine too much. Like the other day, I had an audition for a big movie. Whether I get it or not, I don't know. But, you know, I was going to get out of the bed on the other side. I said, let me get out of bed on the same side I've been getting out on. Just for some bizarre reason, I don't know. That was like, so wow, this is like almost superstitious.
Ziering told us of an elder he really looked up to during his formative years. Something seemed to have been left unsaid or unresolved when he died. But not long ago, he had a dream that has brought him peace of mind.
I was always very close with my grandfather. I always remember doing fun things with him, you know, waking up in the morning and him making breakfast for me and, you know, trying to make me laugh. We had a very tight-knit family. My grandfather was always very special to me. I have always wanted to be an actor, and he was always very supportive of that idea. And when I got the role of Nils, and I remember Mama, and it went to Broadway, I had my grandfather sitting in the front row for opening night. Yeah, he was very proud of me. I saw him smiling down there. It was good. Well, I hadn't been home in about a year, and went back to visit my folks. And I was sleeping in their house, in the room that my grandfather used to sleep in. I had an incredible dream that night. It really wasn't so much of the action of the dream, it was the encounter. I walked into this elevator. There's been 4 or 5 people in this elevator. And, you know, I'm looking down. That's what you do on elevators. And I look up, and my grandfather is there. And he's looking at me, smiling. And it was so bizarre because he was wearing this sky blue cardigan, a nice white shirt underneath, and the black trousers and the shoes that I always remember him wearing. And he was just smiling at me as if to say, you know, I've got my eye on you and everything's okay. And it was so bizarre because when I woke up that morning, I really felt as though I had seen him, as though I had seen him again. It was an incredible experience. And I got a little emotional. But then throughout the day, it was generally a good feeling I had, because it kind of affirmed the fact that he was still alive in some way, whether it be just in my mind or whether he existed in some other plane. I really felt that I had seen my grandfather again. It did have like a guardian angel kind of feeling to it, because though I was in the elevator looking at him, he never said anything to me, and I didn't say anything to him. We just looked at each other. The elevator bell rang. We all got off, and he looked over his shoulder at me, gave me the old nod that he used to give me, and walked off. It was incredible. I really felt touched, moved. It was a sensation that I don't normally get from the dreams that I have. The feeling I got wasn't as though it was the last time I'd ever see him. It kind of reaffirmed the feeling that I get, that if I die, then I'll see him again.
Twice before, we've brought you stories about George Anderson, a simple guy who seems to be able to communicate with the dead. Anderson is sought out by people from around the world, yet he only sets aside a few hours a month to practice his rare talent in return for money. George Anderson tonight faces another test set up by the Extraordinary to see if he can pass on secrets from the dead, secrets of people he could not possibly have known in life. If Anderson has somehow been chosen as the link between the living and the dead, he seems an unlikely choice. He is an unassuming suburban man who does his own laundry and worries about the 2-year waiting list of people who want an appointment with him. He is the subject of 3 books, yet admits he too has questions about the uncanny ability he seems to possess. Norma Williams and her daughter Susan were 2 of the people we flew into Anderson's New York home from California.
Just for the benefit, since the cameras are rolling, I just want to ask
Anderson has never met them and has been told nothing of the loss of their husband and father, Tom. It has been almost 8 years since Tom, a police detective, was gunned down on Halloween in a schoolyard before the eyes of his 5-year-old son, Ryan. The boy is now 13.
All I remember is the gunshots going off and one of my friends grabbing me and pulling me away from the scene. And all I remember was people yelling, call 911, someone's been shot, and get the kid out of here.
And something inside of me said, go to the school. And I thought, no, I can't do that, I'm in costume. And I looked at my watch, and it was 5:40. Unbeknownst to myself, obviously, that was the precise time that Tom was murdered.
I was the one that received the phone call from a lady at my brother's school. And all she said to me on the phone was that there was a shooting and that my dad was involved. And at that minute that she said that, I knew that he was gone.
That Halloween afternoon, life changed forever for the Williams family.
I wanted to lay down and crawl in a hole and just die. Because I lost the best and the most part of my life.
Today, Ryan wants to follow in his father's footsteps as an officer. He just completed a police explorers program.
I bet he's very proud and has a smile on his face.
Norma says Tom often comes to her in dreams. One in particular, which gave her a hint of the extent of his injuries.
And he's standing there just looking down at me very softly, and yet there was a little air of fear in his eyes. I just sensed that he was a little tense about something. And I said, hi, baby. I said, I saw you today. And he looked at me and goes, you did? He goes, yeah, you look good. And I just meant, you look good. And all of a sudden he goes, oh, I'm so glad. I was worried about that.
It was some time after his death that Norma found out the extent of Tom's injuries, that a bullet had gone through his head.
We'd spend a lot of time together, just he and I. I felt like I could do anything or say anything to him, and you know, he would understand and talk to me about it. When I got married and my father wasn't there, it was probably one of the most hardest days I could deal with. I believe that Trenton was sent to me from him. I believe that he has a lot of qualities that my dad does, had. And I missed him so much, and I wanted to see him hold his grandchild. I'm sorry. But it just wasn't gonna happen.
Now, as they listen to Anderson, they are alert for anything that might indicate some contact.
There's a male presence between the two of you. There is a male close to both of you passed on?
Yes.
Yes.
He is family also, he said, yes?
Yes.
And close with the both of you, he has his arms around the two of you as he stands. I don't see him, I see him standing between you. There's this youthful feeling with him now. Does he pass young?
Yeah.
He goes very quickly?
Yes.
That's what he means. Very close with you?
Yes.
Because you're not only family, but you're good pals.
Yes.
Because he keeps coming to you in a friendship sense as well. Are you the only daughter?
Yes.
That's why. He keeps saying you're daddy's girl. Your father extends to you white roses, congratulates you. The white roses are being given to you spiritually as a gift from the hereafter. There would be reason for celebration around you, yes?
Yes.
Because there's white lace around you, which is a symbol of... Are you getting married?
No.
Is it that type of a celebration? I mean, I don't mean a marriage celebration, but a reason for celebration is around you.
Yes.
Because I see white lace, which can symbolize marriage, can symbolize birth, whatever, but there's white lace all around you, and your father is congratulating you on the celebration. He wants you to know he's aware of it. That's why he's bringing it up, because it bothers you that whatever the celebration is, my father's not here.
Yes.
He may not be here physically, but he's with you spiritually, and he's aware of it. I guess your father wants you to know that he knows he has a grandson. Because he claims he's around your son like as what we'd understand as a guardian angel. Is he having trouble with headaches prior to his passing?
No.
Was there trouble with the head at all or something?
Yes.
You know what he's talking about?
Yes,
I keep getting a headache, and I'm thinking he's telling me he's complaining of headaches. But then when you said no, I was going to just drop it, figured I did something wrong, and he said, no, no, no. He says, you're getting the right feeling. Ask about the trouble in the head. Whatever it is, he seems a little reluctant to go into it. He seems to express concern around your dad's health, and does express that your father watched where he's walking, but there's concern around his legs. And one leg is worse than the other. And your husband just, again, we're not telling you anything you don't already know, but he tells your dad to watch where he's walking. Your father probably still has feistiness in him. Also, is he having trouble with his lower back, your dad?
Yes.
Lower back and hip area.
Yes.
I feel pain going through my lower back and hip. There's also congratulations around your son. Is he moving in a job or something? He must be hearing some sort of happy news in a career, because your husband extends congratulations to him also. He doesn't want him to feel left out. And he extends white roses to him, saying that his son has graduated or promoted up to do with career.
Yes.
And your husband is extremely proud of him and expresses that notion of esteem and says, please tell my son you've heard from me in regards to that manner.
After the session, we asked Norma and Susan whether they felt George had made contact with Tom.
I got a sense of excitement, and inside I really knew it was my husband. I mean, I knew he was there in the way he initially described him and the way he was coming to me and my daughter. I could almost feel my husband's arms around us, or me.
My dad, through George, told me that I was Daddy's little girl, and he used to tell me that a lot. And that meant a lot to me. I had to hear that. I hadn't heard it for so long, and I had to hear it.
The one thing that convinced me the most was, according to George, Tom's concern about my father, who was still living, and the physical problems that he's experiencing. They were right down to the, I mean, it's something that no one else could have ever possibly have known outside of my own, you know, immediate family.
Was contact made? Each of us will have to make up our own mind. The other day, I was looking through some old film and came across a piece of rare footage. The only reason I stopped and examined it was there seemed to be something wrong with what I was looking at. After all, how could a big horse race like the Epsom begin with one of the horses so far behind?
Old-timers that were there that day will readily tell you to this day that it is the greatest run ever on a racetrack.
That historic day was the 1946 Epsom at Randwick in Sydney. The hot favourite was Shannon, and on board was the master tactician Darby Munro, the champion jockey who already had 3 Melbourne Cups to his credit. Just the year before, in 1945, he'd piloted Shannon home right here in the Epsom. So, punters and pundits alike reckoned only an accident could stop the pair in their quest for the 1946 trophy. But, as commentator Graham McNeice records in his video, That's Racing, that accident was just waiting to happen.
Darby apparently was the idol of racegoers back in those days. Demon Darby, they used to call him. And he and Shannon enjoyed a great record leading up to the 1946 Epsom. But it was a day that Darby certainly never forgot, and I suppose when you think about it, it's a day that racing never forgot here at Randwick.
It was 1946. Australia was changing, and so was racing. There was the newfangled camera eye, the photo finish. New starting procedures were also being trialled. And it was the starter of that year's Epsom who would trigger one of racing's great controversies.
He was having problems with a couple of runners, most notably a horse by the name of Scotch Mist. And Scotch Mist kept pig rooting at the start, and he was sort of giving them one last chance for Scotch Mist to move up. And he hadn't noticed Shannon standing with the clerk of the course. So he decided to let them go, thinking Shannon was already in line, when Shannon wasn't. Away went the strands, and of course Shannon was standing back with the clerk of the course some, 100 metres before Munro decided to seal the horse into action. He had to make a decision in a split second whether to hold the horse or whether to seal it into action. Bearing in mind it was such a hot favourite for the race, he decided in that split second to let Shannon go, and of course started to chase the field.
And what a chase it was. Shannon was in a hopeless position, left dead at the start. But the master tactician had a few tricks up his sleeve. He and Shannon were making headway, and by the home turn, they'd overtaken the tail enders. Now, just watch Shannon, number 1, plough through the field.
was in within the shadows of the post that Shannon started to fly. Blue Legend on the outside had grabbed the lead by this stage, and Shannon was still coming at them, and many on the course thought as they hit the line that Shannon may have got up. But as the photo finish indicated, it had only just come in to operation by then, showed that Blue Legend had won by a half a head from Shannon.
The crowd didn't know whether to curse or cry. Tens of thousands of pounds had been laid on the line. They didn't know whether Darby Munro was a valiant hero or a careless villain. Those issues were settled later, when the starter accepted full responsibility, and Shannon surged to an honourable place in the record books.
Well, there were some very astute clockers that day, and as soon as Munro sooled Shannon into action, they started their clocks. And when the judge called a halt, he'd clocked 1:31, or very close to that time, which is about 3 seconds faster than the fastest mile run today. So it still is regarded as the fastest mile ever run here at Randwick.
Shannon was later sold to US interests. He won 6 races overseas and equalled 2 world records. He spent his retirement at stud in the Kentucky bluegrass country.
And came into the world after 12 hours of labor. He was weak, starved of oxygen. He wasn't meant to make it.
So then picking up this little just pale blue spindly baby, and I was just thinking, live, Ian, live, because you could tell that baby was not well. I mean, just, you know, the baby couldn't get a breath.
But no one knew about the inner strength or brilliant mind of a boy named Ian Hudson.
For the first couple of months, we felt like we were coming out of the woods, and we felt like, by God, you know, there is such a thing as miracle.
An untold story, next week.
That story is truly fascinating. Don't miss it. Before we go, something else from next week. It's the story of a mysterious disappearance at sea. A boat headed for the Bermuda Triangle that never returned. And the last pictures of that yacht taken by the US Coast Guard. Good night. See you in the future.
I think when you have such a big, expansive ocean, you are going to always have the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle, because things will not come up, and things will be engulfed and they'll be gone forever. And my parents are one of them.
We didn't get one bit of material, whether it was a life jacket or a piece of flotsam or jetsam or a seat cushion, nothing. So we just don't know what happened. It's quite a mystery.